Good evening. This is Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. We're back for a second go-round with Al Robinson. And off camera, the question I thought of to pose to Al, and I have no idea what his response is going to be, but I bet it'll be a good one.
I'll make it as good as possible.
Is that, we have mainstream media and we have citizen journalists being the grassroots drivers of mainstream media.
Right. What
drives citizen journalists? Is there a smaller common denominator that drives what you do?
Well, let's focus on what I do, because citizen journalism is a very, very vast. I mean, citizen journalism can be about politics, it can be about sports,
Yep.
It can be about arts, it can be about whatever you want. But in terms of what I do, what drives me is I'm a progressive. I have a certain progressive viewpoint, and I like to keep track of politicians who either have my viewpoint or are on the opposite side of the political spectrum, and inform people on what they're saying and what they're doing in a way that you don't get with the mainstream media, and also give an avenue to politicians to able to post their opinions on my website as well. And one of the great things about what I do is there's, in terms of like the grassroots below my form of citizen journalism, it's that there's other like-minded people who are like me who are also out there blogging as well.
So there's a circularity. You're driven by other citizen journalists in sort of a circular fashion, or maybe an elliptical kind of fashion across the political spectrum?
Yeah, we all have the common interest. Like, for instance, when I started my site Connecticut blog that I talked about on a previous show, I went to a place called Naples, which is in New Haven. It's a great pizzeria down there.
Yes, it is.
All right. The first couple of months after Ned Lamont did his campaign, I'm there with my still camera and my video camera and my tripod and all my stuff. And I'm going in there to do this big video thing that I can put up on YouTube, which just got underway also. So I walk in there, and there I see a guy by the name of Bob Adams and another guy by the name of Bo Anderson.
I know Bob real well. Connecticut Bob. ConnecticutBob.blogspot.com, I believe, for the audience.
And Bo Anderson, who does the site called Space Boy at the time.
Space Boy, with a Z instead of a C,
And actually, Bo Anderson had a different blog at that time. So when I saw him, he kind of knew me, and I kind of knew him vaguely. And I said, hey, look, great to see you here. I got all this stuff. Here's a camera. Go up there and take those pictures in that there, and there while I do this videotaping. And he did that while I was videotaping, and then after a little while he came back with the camera and said, all right, great. Here's this video camera. Point it towards Ned and just keep it on him. And while I'm doing all this, this other guy, Bob Adams, who is a videographer at the time, was watching all this, and he's saying, wow, this is great. I'm a progressive just like these two guys are. They're videotaping and taking pictures like I can do. Maybe I should start doing this. And that got basically Connecticut Bob going, and that really got Bo Anderson into videotaping and following Ned around and just doing video blogging. And that's how the progressive blogging effort in Connecticut is pertaining to those two websites.
So it was an energizing that happened because three people that didn't know each other got into a very quick cooperative venture to cover an event.
And because we also had common interests, and that's important. You have to have, behind your blogging, you have to have a desire to do this. You have to have some reason for doing this. Like, for instance, again, I'm a progressive individual who likes to follow politics. So that's my interest, and that's why I blog in terms of politics. If I had a really strong interest in, let's say, following the New York Jets, I would do a blog about the New York Jets, but my underlying reason to do this form of citizen journalism is because I'm a Jets fan. And I like to follow the Jets, and I want to talk about things that you might not necessarily see in the newspapers or on talk sports radio. And pertaining to my political blogging, I do what I do because at the time you didn't see what I was doing anyplace else, and especially with Danbury, you didn't see the Common Council meetings, which is now called the City Council meetings, anywhere. It used to be on local access years ago, but it's been gone. And I would go to these meetings and I would sit there, I hear what these politicians are saying, I'm like, what you're saying is not jiving with what's going on in these articles here. Or there's a lot of stuff that's going on in Danbury where an individual will just get up and scream, where did this Dunkin' Donuts come from? Or where did this development come from? What happened here? How could this happen? And I'm like, well, it happened in a planning department meeting, or planning commission meeting, or a zoning commission meeting. And you're like, well, what's that?
That people chose not to go to.
Well, sometimes they choose not to go, but you don't know if you don't research it.
Do these things sometimes happen? Because as I understand it, if some change is going to come in a property adjacent to yours, you're supposed to get a notice.
You're supposed to get a notice. But sometimes, if let's say you're in the neighborhood, let's say you're not in that particular area where you will get that notice, but you're in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You might not get the notice. But the real important thing is the way you get notices. Let's say, for instance, if you're in that certain zone, you might get a notice in the mail.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you usually will get a notice in the form of reading a little blurb like that big
in the paper,
in the font that's like typeset like that big in the newspaper. Most of the time, you don't know this stuff is going on.
It's placed in that's composed in such a boring fashion that by the time you get down an inch into the column, you're ready to fall asleep.
Who's reading the public notices of the newspaper?
And the public notices are probably put together that way intentionally to discourage interest.
Well, no. Also, it costs a lot of money for the city to put these notices in the newspaper.
Okay.
All right, and it does cost a lot of cash to the city's defense or to the government's defense. It does cost a lot of coin.
Yeah.
But again, unless it's on the front page, unless it's right in front of your face, most of the time you just don't know it. And which is why I like doing what I do, because I'll go down to these meetings and I will videotape the whole thing for you. Of course, I'll form my own opinion about what's going on.
Sure. Yeah.
About how I feel about the matter.
But the capture on film is what is spoken.
That's what it's all about.
The spoken words and the whole factual transcript of what's being said.
Yeah.
Without your input, which of course you can probably afterwards make an editorial comment about. Let me ask you this. Citizen journalism spans the entire spectrum. Left, center, right, everything. Right on out to the fringes. Well, I don't think there are fringes anymore on the left side. I don't see too many communists running around anymore, or too many Marxists around anymore.
No.
But on the other side, you do have a lot of people that I think are. It's fair to call them racists. It's probably fair to call them, in a lot of cases, Nazis, because they do like the structure that Hitler provided for his people and Mussolini provided for his people. And the trains ran on time, by the way. But what is the relationship across this spectrum of citizen journalism? Do you get a chance to interact with people from other citizen journalists that have a very different point of view?
Oh yeah. Look, well, now we're in the year 2010. Unlike what I experienced in 2006 when there was nobody around. I think I was one of the very first persons out there video blogging in Connecticut at the time. But now, because of the expansion of YouTube, because of the accessibility of making websites very easily, such as using Blogger or Facebook or things of that nature, and the ease in which it takes for you to capture something on video and just upload it right onto YouTube. It's very easy to do nowadays. Yeah, you see a lot of these individuals out there who have similar passions. Maybe it's not your same political viewpoint, but they're just as passionate about how they feel in their ideas and their issues, and they're out there doing their thing. And I see them all the time.
And you interact, you get to know each other.
Oh yeah, it's politics. It's not personal. You know, it shouldn't be personal.
Fair enough.
It shouldn't be personal because it gets a little crazy when you let it get too personal. That's when danger happens. That's when dangerous things can come up, and that's going a little too far.
And the audience knows that my mantra is that even if you have a very different perspective on something than I do, if you've taken the time to actually think it through and formulate opinion, and I've got a good friend, Donna Kaya, who will be on my show at some point. I've known Donna for years. She and I have an extreme difference of an opinion on everything. But Donna's taken the time to think her viewpoint through and can very clearly enunciate her viewpoint. And I think that if a person's taken the time to think something through and put the power of their mind into it, then you owe them the respect to listen to their point of view, even if you are absolutely diametrically opposed to what they have to say.
Yeah, and
so you see a little bit of that between you and bloggers that are doing that fine-tuned work.
Now there's a difference. You know, I mean, if you're blogging and you got a passion for this and you're writing correctly and you're doing your stuff legit and good, then cool, that's no problem. If you're off the deep end, and you're just crazy from the get-go, and you're a nut job before you even started blogging.
So how do you define that? I mean, tell the audience how you define that.
I don't, derogatory comments towards, immigrants, for instance.
Right.
We've seen this here in Danbury. You have some individuals who are just off the deep end who openly come out and say, hey, I think some of these immigrants in our area should be assassinated, or things
that sounds like a fellow by the name of T does that.
You got individuals like that, but there's a lot of individuals like that. There's a lot of them like that. I wouldn't want to be associated with those individuals.
It's hard to see. It's hard to give them credit for having thought that line of thinking through very well.
Yeah, and I don't really consider them citizen journalists. A citizen journalist, again, is somebody who, in my opinion, goes out there, grabs the story, follows people who either agree or doesn't agree with their viewpoint, but covers events, and comes back and reports on it. Like, for instance, there's an individual by the name of Palin Smith, who I think does one of the Dump Dodd movements. Very nice individual. In fact, we sat back a few times. I told him a couple of times, hey, look, it's nice you got this camera. Maybe you want to change your camera. Maybe you want to use a tripod in the future. And we share notes back and forth. Pleasant individual. It's doing basically the stuff I did 4 years ago when I followed Ned around. And that stuff is good because, it doesn't matter about your political viewpoint when it comes to citizen journalism. It's more of your quality of work.
So opposition can be loyal opposition. In other words, people that would, in the case of, say, Chris Dodd, but people that would say, I'm not going to call him names, but I'm going to disagree with votes he's taken and things he's done, rather than demean the character of the individual, than to respectfully disagree with what that individual has done.
Well, again, it depends on what you want to do with the citizen journal. There's people out there who, like, I know, for instance, during the Ned Lamont Joe Lieberman race, I made it a point to show people Joe Lieberman's dark side. Say, here's Joe in Iraq, here's Joe trashing the Democratic Party, here's Joe this, here's Joe that. I mean, you recall about all that stuff. It was pretty big. And so the people who were doing stuff on Chris Dodd had every right to say, hey, here's Chris Dodd with this, here's Chris Dodd with that. Whether it was true or not true is a whole different matter.
So there was a bit of facts mixed with a bit of opinion.
Yeah, and again, you got to filter through that stuff and you got to do the research and make sure what they're saying is legit. I'm absolutely confident the stuff that we said about Joe Lieberman was legit because it's even been proven to this day.
Right. It was based on you showed statements, long, detailed statements that he had made, and then commented on those statements.
Or contradict himself when you say, I'm going to be here for the citizens of Connecticut if you re-elect me. As soon as we re-elect him, where'd he go? Gone.
It wasn't Joe, just for a second on Joe, and we've had Joe on our show in absentia. We had an empty chair because Joe wouldn't be here.
Okay.
And the question we posed to the empty chair, amongst other, was during the 06 campaign against him and Ned Lamont, Joe stood up on the stage in the third debate in New London and told the citizens of Connecticut that he was the only candidate on that stage that could guarantee the citizens of Connecticut health care reform. And then of course a few years later he's proud of the fact that he's the only one who can derail health care reform via threat of filibuster.
Well, not only that, he in New London, if you recall, because I ran this video clip on my website, or on My Left Nutmeg as well, that he got up and he did his version of the public option. Which sounds a lot like what was being done under the Obama. It was almost the same.
To get elected, he was in favor of it.
I think it was called Meta Choice or something like that. And then he just flip-flops on everything. And the great thing about citizen journalism, again, is that here he is, made that comment 4 years ago, and then what happened is when he started to go against the public option, the bloggers, went back, retrieved that footage, put it up on YouTube, and went viral with this. Say, hey, look, here's Joe Lieberman saying this stuff right here. The media's got to call him out on this. And what happened? They called him out on it.
After they got the impetus from citizen journalists like yourself.
And that's one of the great things about citizen journalism is that you have the ability to hold the media accountable for what they are doing in terms of their reporting. Because if they're not doing their job, the blog's going to come out and say, hey, look, this guy is not asking this individual the right questions. Or in terms of this gubernatorial race, there's a lot of stuff about the latest candidate who's running right now, and Mark Boughton, that the media statewide should be asking, which unfortunately was not asked that much by the News Times during this time period, because the New Times kept shrinking and shrinking. Whether it is his stance on the parade ordinance, the statements he made about ICE access, the statements he's made about the sex offender ordinance, the contributions from Galante, and a whole host of other matters. There's statements that there's some vetting that needs to be done by the media in terms of asking this individual the tough questions, because he has an ability to say one thing and his record shows something else. And I think that's where citizen journalism can come in great, whether it's Mayor Boughton, Dan Malloy, Tom Foley, Linda McMahon. For instance, Linda McMahon, we have her campaign finance statements, and it shows that she's not raised over, I don't know, maybe $50,000. I don't know the exact total, but I know it's below $50,000 in contributions in 2 quarters. Yes, she spent millions of dollars. Republicans always say these seats are not for sale, and we have a Republican here who's obviously trying to buy the Senate seat because she has no contributions behind her effort. And yet they would criticize the other millionaire in the race. Oh, they criticize Ned Lamont. Relentlessly. So it's to be fair. That's where bloggers, again, we can pull up her statement and say, hey, look, she's getting these type of contributions, but she's putting out millions and millions of dollars, just flooding it out there. Is that fair? And if you do it enough times, if you say it enough times, if you blog about it enough times, the media will pick up on it and run with that story. Do you think the media that survives on advertising, and that's obviously not citizen journalists, you might have some little banner ads that give you a little extra money to finance what you do, but there are no major contributors, and certainly a mobile Exxon is not going to have a banner ad on your site. Even though it certainly would probably do them well to get in with progressives, or at least to make up for some of the evil that they do. But to help at least. Thank you, Jeff, from the studio on that one. And I lost my train of thought now. Thank you, Jeff. Well, if you're talking about how we make revenue on blogs, there really is very hard to make money doing blogging. Where I actually was going was the media that is fed by corporate money. Is that media not, because of that, beholden to corporate money? Does not corporate money drive mainstream media? And again, if you have candidates, whether it be a Ned Lamont or a Linda McMahon, flooding the mainstream media with advertising, is that not in effect buying that media? Because the media knows that unless they treat the candidate with a fair amount of deference, they may not get as many ads, as much advertising dollars from that candidate. Well, I don't know. That's a good question, and I can just say I don't really know. I don't know how much influence they have in terms of stuff like that. I do know, for instance, there was a reporter, a columnist for the Hartford Courant who was recently let go because of an opinion that he made in a column that went contrary to a major advertiser. I don't want to. Yeah. So. That in that case is pending, and it's allegations. We don't really know the details of that, and it's not actually gone to court yet. But I can say again, the great thing about citizen journalists is that we're not beholden to anybody. Well, without any a priori evidence, but just intuitively, I think anybody would accept the strong possibility, at least the strong possibility, that advertising contributions through payments through advertising to a newspaper or television or a magazine would hold some amount of sway
with that outlet.
It might. I would say more.
I would say intuitively you'd have to almost say it's some. How much is hard to judge? Well, there's got to be some.
I would say more importantly, maybe not necessarily with the advertisers, but definitely with the editors there. Like if you can read a piece in the Waterbury Republican, you know what type of spin you're getting from the Waterbury Republican versus the Hartford Courant, versus the New London Day, versus the Journal Enquirer.
There's a consistency that you can sense based on knowing the people that are writing the articles.
Oh,
you kind of get into
and the editors behind
flow.
it, and the editors behind it. More importantly,
you can kind of sense the flow and know what to expect. But then you can take it and put it in perspective and say, well, that's what I would expect them to say. So I'll tone down I'll question them a little more, knowing that this is what I expect out of them anyway.
And it's the same thing with citizen journalists. You can go to. My Left Nutmeg. It's called My Left Nutmeg, for crying out loud. You know what you're going to get when you come there.
No surprise there.
Or you'll read the blog from Chris Healy, who is the chairman of the
Republican Party.
You know,
who, by the way, I've invited onto the show, Chris Healy. Are you listening? I want you on my show. We could have a great discussion. I'm sure we could. So come along.
So that's the. You get different stuff from different spectrums. But again, the great thing about citizen journalism is that we can do whatever we want. We don't have big man behind us telling us what to do and what not to do.
You're the entire newsroom.
Yeah,
you're the editor. You're the reporter. You've got all those skills wrapped into one individual.
But at least in terms of what I do, there's great responsibility in that, and I feel that although, again, I can't stress this enough, although sometimes I'm pretty snarky in my viewpoint and snarky in my post, and sometimes I got a certain way in which I present my information. But in the end, after you read that stuff, there's 9 times out of 10, there's a video clip, there's documentation, there's something that can either back up what I'm saying or give you an opportunity to read what I'm reading that I base my post off of, and you can form your own opinion. And I think that's an important thing that I would love to see more in citizen journalists. Just don't give your whole spin. If you want to put up a video clip, fine. But you should also give a person an opportunity to see the entire meeting or the entire event in full context, because you can take a little clip and spin it any way you want.
Yeah.
We've seen that a lot.
We know that with Ann Coulter with her books, where she has ... and about 12 words, and then ... and she'll take a few words here and there, and you can take that, and you can take a quotation, a 1,000-word quotation from somebody, pick out the 50 words that you want to, and turn it around completely on its ear.
Yeah, and that's not
the quotation and the meaning of the quotation.
It's not fair to do something like that, because you're manipulating and twisting somebody's words. Yeah. What I like to do is I just like to say, for instance, Mayor Boughton stated that one of the reasons of the parade ordinance was because of the 2006 volleyball games. And I'll say, in this video clip I have here from a TV show, he's being interviewed by a reporter from the News Times who brings that up, and she says, hey, look, there was no prior planning from the people to spontaneously celebrate. And the mayor said, well, yes, there was, because we knew about it, so there was prior planning. And you say to yourself, wow, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The mayor didn't say that.
Well, the mayor's office and the police department knew about it, that means that automatically there was prior planning on somebody's part?
That's what he stated.
He's taking any possibility out that people do things actually with some spontaneity?
Well, it's one of these moments where you can catch this mayor say things that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and people are like, no, he didn't say that. What are you talking about? I'm like, well, okay, here's the video clip, and then you show the video clip, because I can say in my post, well, he doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This is crazy for him to say that. This is nuts. And then you just show the video clip, and you can form your own opinion.
Well, I have to say that even if I watched something that you had done in which you actually presented the actual verbatim moment of the video of what was said and then commented on, I might disagree with you on your conclusion, but it wouldn't be. You can disagree 100%, or you can disagree 0%, or you're somewhere in the middle. And I think we'd always find anybody that watches what you do always has to be somewhere 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I doubt anybody, even myself, agrees with you on everything.
No, and that's important, because I don't want you to believe 100% of what I'm saying, because that's not my point. My point is to give you what's going on in Danbury via the City Hall meetings, stuff like that, that you don't necessarily see in the News Times, or better yet, it's not being reported. And these things affect your life as a taxpayer and as a resident here in this city. I don't like the fact that there's not enough beat reporters down there at City Hall following the stuff that's happening at City Hall. I'm very upset that there's only one reporter following City Hall, for instance. I think that's outrageous. In the 7th largest city in the state of Connecticut, there's not quality reporters covering ad hoc committee meetings, zoning commission meetings, planning commission meetings, being on top of everything that's happening down there. It was there over 20 years ago. Back, if you looked at the News Times under the Eric West administration, you had reporters reporting on ad hoc committees. You don't see anything like that right now. It
seems like that would be, these are small items within the functioning of government, but they're items that affect what happens up the chain of government.
The most important things in terms of the city, if you want to know how government works, you follow the ad hoc committee meetings, you follow planning commission meetings, and you follow the zoning commission meetings. Zoning carves out the landscape of the city. Planning decides what type of buildings or structures are going to be on that land that's been that particular piece of land that's been carved out. And the ad hoc committees are the micro committees that assemble and get together, do all the hard work in terms of bills that are presented before the entire council for a vote. And by the time it gets to a council from an ad hoc committee meeting, you already know what the vote is. But you want to see the hard work that was done to make that bill happen. You go to the ad hoc committee, you hear all the details about these things that are affecting you as a taxpayer. That's the important stuff that's going on in the city. I don't think that's being reported enough in the News Times, and that's why I try my best to follow these things, especially now when we're coming up upon a budget time, these hard economic times. You want to know what's happening down at the Board of Ed in terms of the school budget that takes over 50% of our entire city budget. You want to know what the details of that $100 million school budget is all about, or how government operates. All these little ad hoc committee meetings that are going to be talking about their particular budgets, Government 1, Government 2, Health and Services. You want to know what's going on there. So when you see this entire massive budget in the end, you'll know what the details of that budget is all about versus just going to a city council meeting, being presented with a multi-$100-million budget. You say, oh, it's okay, or no, it's no good. So again, that's where our public comes into play.
You're giving me a lot of information, and I'm absorbing as much as I can. But at the same time, you're kind of forcing me to come up with questions in response to that. And you know that there are two kinds of teachers in the world. There's the kind of teacher that feeds their students facts, and there's the kind of teacher who teaches their students not facts, but how to think. You are definitely the second type. We're going to have to wrap it up right there. This progressive soup, we have a lot more to talk about, and we will, guaranteed. Al Robinson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
And everyone, enjoy your evening, and think. Think and question.
Think. All right. You're right.